It's a weird way to start summer's man from home, learning via the phone, or perhaps via the internet, whether Zoom or other methods of learning. But maybe this learning from a distance at home and utilizing technology in order to allow us to continue to learn, to have Sidra Yeshiva to the best of our ability, to be able to listen to the Shiurim of our Rebbeim via these channels of technology. Perhaps this is the very tikkun to the Magefa, to the plague, this epidemic that we're going through, this pandemic. Plagues and epidemics aren't new to the world. They've been around forever. But many times, always in the past, these plagues were relatively localized to the extent that when the Chida traveled to Spain, he was quarantined, I think, for a month. Because that was what was done when somebody came from a foreign land. You put him into some sort of quarantine, put him into some sort of camp for a month to make sure that he didn't have any sicknesses and wasn't going to contaminate the society there. So they were contained, and it was very much a local magefa. You left the area, you stayed away from other people who were infected, you social distance yourself from the area of the plague, and you were fine. So Moreno Shiva Rebbe Bear pointed out that this is something that has changed now, and it's a pandemic, something which is inflicting the entire world bivasachas, all at once. And he offered an insight into why it's changed. Now, it's technically, we know, yes, we're globalized. People travel around the world. People came from China to other places, and that's what infected them. Or people traveled to China and traveled back, and that's what infected the various areas around the world. But he explained why it is that now such a plague, which is something which is obviously Yad Hashem, is something which is worldwide. You know, the internet is referred to as the World Wide Web. So Rabbi Bear explained that once upon a time somebody did an Aveiro, or was maybe on a communal level. It was a local Aveiro. They bashmut somebody, they spoke Lashon Hara, there was an issue in a community. So maybe Le'aleinu, the Rebbeinu Shalom brought on them a Magefa. But it was for a particular community, for a particular area, because it was localized, because the Aveiros were localized. But what's changed in our day and age, because of what we refer to as the World Wide Web, as the internet, Aveiros have become globalized. Adam Yeshu Be'esav V'Royu Mitzapim Mitchilus Ha'olam Ha'Tzayfei. Right? It's like the Ar that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in the Shivas Yimei Bereshis, and he was going as that Ar lost in love. Why? Because he saw that Kivin Shirah Dar Mabel Shasara, that he would the Dar Mabel that would use it for bad things. Chalila. Her wanted to minimize the bad that they could do, and therefore hid that light that allowed him to see from one end of the world to the other. But somehow we've rediscovered that light. And a person can sit in their house and they can make Averos. Not only can they see Averos, they can make Averos worldwide. Lashon Hara, Rechilus, Meitzi Shemron, Dvarim Tmeim, Had Ma'od, Dvarim Shal Pritzos. Things that are inappropriate to see. And a person doesn't even have to feel like they're lacking busha. They don't have to feel that they're being so immodest, because they can do it in the most private of ways, on their cell phone, b'chadr chadarim, in the bathroom, or anywhere. And the Averos have become globalized. Therefore, a plague, Hashem can bring a plague which is globalized to inflict the whole world. Let's take this a step further. Now, because of this Mageva, so I'm giving the shmuz in my living room, dining room. So we'll say a Maisa that happened in this living room, dining room. About 4 years ago, a group of Bachrim here from a yeshiva for Bachrim that are having a difficult time with the regular yeshivas. And one of the Bachrim that was sitting at my Shabbos table, he said, I was really a good Bachar, an excellent Bachar. You know how I ended up here? My parents bought me a smartphone. And they ruined me. My parents ruined me. So it was actually in the middle of a different conversation, overheard that, and I turned to him and said, tell me, how old were you when your parents bought you that smartphone? And he told me he was 18. He said, your parents bought it for you when you were 18, and you're blaming your parents? I said, grow up, it's your fault. So I don't know why your parents bought it for you, and I don't know why you took it, but if you're old enough to buy cigarettes, if you're old enough to buy alcohol, if you're old enough to serve in the army, if you're old enough to vote, why on earth are you not old enough to be able to make decisions? You are a grown-up. You're a yeshiva g'dayla. You were in a dorm. You can decide. You can decide if you should take it, and you can decide what you should look at. But let me explain to you, I told him. What's really the issue over here? And I share with them something very personal. I told them that at some point when the OU made me get a smartphone, so at the time I told them I had a smartphone for about 6 years. Maybe less, I guess. This was 3 or 4 years ago, so it was less time that I had internet from the OU in the office for 6 years already. And I had a smartphone for a few years. I told him it took me 2 years of having a smartphone from the OU till I realized that there was a filter on it, b'chlal. And that was only accidentally. I was looking up a medication. Somebody asked me about a certain medication for Pesach. It was a medication I wasn't familiar with and didn't find in any of the guides. So I was trying to find out the ingredients, and I looked it up on the internet on my smartphone. And I guess one of the side effects must have had a word in the description that somehow kicked in the filter, and the page from Internet Rimon, the filtering system they were using, came up. So afterwards, I asked the person in the OU responsible for all the technological things, well, if there's filters, he says, yeah, of course there's filters and everything. We're not going to take a chrayas. And with many workers who are using the phone, we don't want to take a chrayas on their ruchnis. I said, but you know why it took me so long to discover that there was a filter on the phones? There was a filter on the internet. He told me, Rabbi, there's no proof, it's because you're a tzaddik. I told him, how have I been mistapik with being just a beinaini? Being an average Jew. I don't need to be a tzaddik, I don't think I am. Elamai, let me explain to you what the difference is. So I want to ask all of you sitting around the table, what was the first thing you ever used the internet for? Was it to do an online purchase? Was it to research some sort of topic? Not necessarily Torah, but history, science, medical, something. Was it maybe to research something of Torah? Or was it, lo aleinu chas v'shalom, to look at to watch a movie or to see something even worse than that. No way. You know what they all answered? They all answered the last option. I wasn't surprised. Are you? So I explained, I said, I want to explain to you why. I said, I'm not the least bit surprised that that was what you used it for. You know why? I said, when I was a kid, and this is exactly the reason why I didn't realize it was a filter for a few years. When I was a kid, I was about 10 years old, 11 years old. My father was a professor in university, in Boston University. And they offered him to be able to bring internet back home. Well, it was from some sort of grant he was working on. He brought internet into the house. And he announced to us at the dinner table, this is before anybody came out against it, because nobody had it in their house. And at dinner, the night my father brought it back, he told us, Mommy and I have a present for you. It's something unbelievable. You can look up any pasuk in the Torah without using a korkedansia and see exactly where it is. You can look up any Maimer Chazal. It will help you with schoolwork. It's mamish, a living encyclopedia. You can find every Torah on it for Shabbos. That was our introduction to the World Wide Web, to internet. So what did you hear about internet? I told them. When you were a kid, you were told that internet is the equivalent of the 3 cardinal sins. That it's like the Gimel Chamuros. It's like Gilui Raya, Shvichas Damim, Avodah Zarah. So to you, you think of it as the worst possible item in the world. So when somebody gives that to you, what do you use it for? You use it for something like that. That's what you use it for, because that's what you think it is. But if what you think it is a tool for good things, that's what you're going to use it for. Are you going to discover that you can do on it not such good things, or maybe even horrible things, chas v'shalom? Of course. But your approach to it is going to be different. So Rabbi Yeber talks about how many people have it there because they need it. They have a terim for tzorchei parnasa. It was permitted for them to bring it into their offices or maybe even their houses for purposes of being mefarnes, for work, for things that they need to do. But they don't know where to draw the line. But it's more than that. If the association milichatchila is that it's a davar aser, so of course, even when they were matter for you. So what happened? Some rabbi came and told you it's mutter for you to use it, and be careful how you use it. But he's be'atzim being matter to you to work on Shabbos. He's be'atzim being matter to you to do avodah zarah and gilui rayos and shmichus damim. Why? To be nisparnes. So why should you draw the line? Basically, about 20 years ago, when I learned in Shar Torah, they came to Reb Zalek Epstein, who was then the Zikan of Rosh Yeshivas in America, and they wanted him to sign a letter against the internet, and he wouldn't sign. And they told him, after the Yeshiva versteht nicht dem Sakonis, was liegt in them. Maybe the Yeshiva doesn't understand the Sakonis that there are in the internet, the dangers, the spiritual dangers that lurk in the internet. Shiva told him, Herzu, ich verstehe die Sache besser von dir. I understand a lot better than you. Aber fort, ich kann nicht straßen. I can't sign. I still can't sign. So they were shocked. If he understands better than us, how could he not sign against it? So he said, I want to tell you what else I understand. I know that in 20 years' time, there aren't going to be banks anymore the way we know them, and there aren't going to be supermarkets the way we know them, and everything is going to be through this thing called internet. And then you're going to have to be matter. And we can't answer something now that we're going to have to answer in the future. So, They said, so what should we do? So Rabbi Zalik told him, I don't understand. He says, pritzos, real pritzos, to see a woman that's not tsanua, or to do a real avera with somebody. That's not worse than the internet. Of course it is. And what do? Our whole chinuch system is based on teaching girls to be tzanua, on teaching boys to be shomer their inayim, to keep separation between genders, and not to talk lashon hara. These are all things that are so important and crucial to our chinuch. So too, said Rabbi Zalik, we have to incorporate now the sakanos, those dangers that lurk in the internet, into our educational systems, into how we teach our children to cope with it, to teach them how to get around it. Like the Vilna Gaon says, it's brought in Ma'aser Rav. They asked the Vilna Gaon about going to the marketplace, because in those days in the marketplace, there were women of ill repute. So he said, is it mutter to go to the marketplace? And the Vilna Gaon answered, of course, a person needs to be inspired, needs to be mefarnes himself. The person has to make a living. So Elamai, what should he do? He zok the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon says, daven before you go to the shokti, you shouldn't be nichshol. Daven before you go there, you shouldn't succumb to sin. So too, with the internet, which is actually going to bring me to another point. Those who are more vulnerable to sinning on the internet, which is probably everybody. Rabbi Krakowski used to always say, used to say that somebody has internet in the house, they should have it in the living room. They shouldn't put it in the back room. They should have it in the living room. Why? Because it should be something that it's not b'chadr chadar. It's something you do in front of everybody. So you're more careful what you do. Because it's hard to, you can't rely on yourself that you're not going to sin. So you know what, before you use the internet, say a kapitel of Tilman, it's going to change. You're going to say, I said a kapitel of Tilman, I shouldn't be nishchal. It's hard for me to go gleich right away and do an avera with it. So I'm going to be more careful what I do on the internet. If I say that little tefillah, kapitel Tilman, say a shir maus, epis, something. But now that we're utilizing internet for dvarim k'doshim, dvarim niskavim, for the holiest of things, for Talmud Torah. Let us change the way we look at things. Let us change our perspective. Let us change how we use things, and let us turn everything. Let us be mekadesh chayil. Let us be kiviyachol like the Eibishter, v'lachta b'drachav, to be mekadesh the chayil. V'yibach ba'apav. Ruach nishmas chaim, the Rebbeinu Shalom took Adama. He took the most, the zach was his given, what was the most megushmi, the most physical elements, dirt. And he breathed into it a ruach and a shama ta'ira. He turned dirt into a man, into a tzelem elikim. We too can do the same. Not just allowing something which is asa for parnasa. Chas v'shalom, we're not going to allow anything that's asa for parnasa. It has to be meiser nefesh to have parnasa, and we daven for it that the parnasa should be al yedei dvar mutar, and you say it in benching. Kim yodcham leha psucha k'daisha. We want our parnasa to be kadosh. Let's turn things into dvarim shebekdusha, and let it be the same as everything else, that tzadikim yelchu v'payishlim ba yikashelu. That of course it can be used for Avera, anything, even the Torah Akdaisha Alein, even the Torah itself, Chas v'sholem, can be used by people with all sorts of krum, with all sorts of crooked ways of thinking to do Averas, to justify their Averas. We don't have to look very far, we all know people like that. So of course the internet can be used for bad things, and of course lots of people use it for bad things. But we have to change it. We have to use it only for Dvarim Kedoshim, and it's going to be used. We have to come to terms with that, but we have to use it only for Dvarim Kedoshim. And of course, I'm not saying that everybody should have internet. Chas v'shalom. If you don't need it, it's a davar, then of course it could be maybe the day batala. You know, one of the best things I ever did was when we moved houses The old house was an apartment that only had two outer walls, two walls to the outside. Then I moved to something which is more of a mat of the house, and there's windows on at least three sides, maybe even there's more windows on three sides. So there's much less, and there's a lot of windows. So there's much less wall space, and there's less wall space. You have less space to put svarm shank, to put your library. So I didn't have as much space for svarm as I had in my old house. So I was debating what to do. I gave away a lot of svarm. You know, it was one of the best things I did. It sounds horrible. But what does it do? When you have lots of svarm, it's Yissachar. You go, you look here, you look there, you look there. You get phenomenal, you get busy with all sorts of things. And it takes you away from really learning pshat and asugya. So when you give away all the excessive svarm that you don't really need, that just pick your curiosity, what happens is you're left with all the svarm that you really need to learn. And you learn them. To have internet when you don't need it, it's something which is going to take you away. It's not even going to be that you spend time learning a sefer that maybe you didn't really need to learn. Instead of learning Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, so you're learning somebody's vertlach on the parsha. No, it's not even that. It can take you much further than that avada. So when a person doesn't need it, and for Bishiva Bachrim who don't need such things, they don't need to be farnumen with anything, and they definitely don't need social media, chas v'shalom, or anything like that. So of course it's bittul zman, of course it's bittul Torah, of course it's something which is old and it's an extra nisayon that's not asked for. It's like for Bachram to work. Why should a Bachar work? It's the same type of idea. And it has to be something which is kept always to a minimum and only used when it needs to be used. But why? Because it's something that's good. And if you're not using it for something that's good, it's not something that you need right now to use for something that's good, you're not going to use it because then you're abusing it. You're not using it anymore, but you're abusing it. Baisai, let us be a tikkun gadol. Let us think about all the things that was used for horrible things. The shaming. This whole musik of shaming. It's nishkit Yiddish and musik. It's against everything we stand for. L'samed adam reyecha, ishtar of lashon hara, of rechilus, of maitzi shemra, of abanas panim berabim. It's berabim mamish. It's not what we are. We have to stop that. And I had to see Dvarim Tameim. It's not even like, when people want to bring rayas from various Rishonim and different things about images that might not be so tzanua, that maybe, it's not the same thing or this thing. When it's so vivid and so graphic, of course it is. Of course it is. And we have to be much more careful. Let us use it from now on only for a Torah. And only for things that we need to do, for things that are important in order to live a good life. Be'ikr for Torah. And Kosh Baruch Hu b'meiser charinaf, he removed kivyachol, his anger. He's a cherpam amo Yisrael. And when we be zeiche to be back inside our Batei Midrashos, our real Batei Midrashos, our holy Torah, Matayvo Elachi Yaakov Mishkan Yisrael, which is Tarti Mash when we say when we go to shul in the morning, but it also refers to our personal houses and the tznios in those personal houses. Maybe we use this time in order to enhance those elements of tznios in our houses. And as Hashem, when we go back to our public houses, our houses of Torah, and learn Torah b'rabim, b'tzavsal, together, mamish, b'karev, Amen, amen.